on, everybody? Welcome in to the North End Podcast, episode 189. My name is Zach Graham, your host here in the North End, joined, as always, by my good buddy. He's on record as my best friend. His name is Ian Michaud, and we call him E. It is December, and with December comes the true start of the MLS offseason. So we'll talk a little bit about that. Some other stuff that we wanted to dive into before a big academy update, and of course, some nonsense with the goals bracket. But sitting here, it's a little bit chilly now. We're officially in December. Saw some temps in the low 50s, high 40s. Had a fire going at our Thanksgiving where I was down in San Antonio. So then we're feeling like we're in the season, right? How was your Thanksgiving? How was your week? How you doing?
Oh, man, I had a great week. Thanksgiving was fantastic. Did the turkey trot in the morning, and that was great.
How'd it go?
That was awesome. I had a great time. I did really well. For me, I suppose, finished at 48 and a half minutes for the 5 miles. So
not bad.
Pretty good.
Sub 10 there.
Yeah, we'll take it. It was really fun, man. There was a ton of people out there. I thought maybe I would see somebody I knew, but I did not. But everyone that was in our group was able to finish, which was our goal. Nobody got any injuries. Nobody passed out, died, anything along those lines. So it was a good day. And then enjoyed some Friendsgiving with some buddies over at my buddy Mitch's spot, and might have been the best food we've ever had. People showed out. It was well done. Procured. It was very nice. So I had a great week.
Not too much cheese in the potatoes there?
No, not too much. I brought my store-bought green bean casserole because I knew I was going to be hurting from the run and didn't want to have to run around and get all that stuff going together. But it was good. So I had a wonderful time. How about yourself?
It was good, man. The food. Look, my future mother-in-law, I think she faked me out here. It was the first time in my life that I didn't go back for a second plate. And I think what it was is we were eating on paper plates this time, and she got these like giant oval ones, and I just loaded that thing up, and I didn't really pick up on I finished, and I was like, well, normally I'm gonna go back up there and take down. We're gonna house this second plate. It's round two, but didn't get that in. The breakfast the next morning was a full-on plate though, and then my fiance coming back home tonight. I had to leave a little bit early for some work stuff, but she'll be bringing those leftovers back with her. So I think tonight we'll go round 3. But yeah, man, it was good. And then you and I and our buddy AG went to check out Big X the Plug last night.
It's true.
At Emo's, which was great as well. So anything else you want to add here? There's not a lot to talk about here this week, but of course we're going to manufacture the Austin FC talk here. Anything else for you before we get this one started?
No, let's get it rolling.
All right, before we jump into episode 189, just want to remind you all listening or watching on the YouTube channel that the best way to support the show is by downloading the audio version of this episode wherever you get your podcasts. And you can, Apple Music, Spotify, wherever. You toggle on auto downloads, and that will allow you to support the show going forward without having to think about it further. Of course, you can also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your pods. And then if you are watching on our YouTube channel, subscribe to the channel. That does help us grow the show. You can hit the notification bell to know when a live stream pops up or a new episode goes live. And of course, on this episode, hit the thumbs up. Like the video. Help us battle the YouTube algorithm overlords. Atone for your sins. Wash yourselves clean in the waters of the North End. So right, I've made a lot since last episode, and then starting off today, it's December. So what's next? So I guess backing up to Wednesday, right? So the day before Thanksgiving this past week was the deadline for all the teams that were not still in the playoffs, right? The Final Four, those semifinals that happened yesterday. Everybody outside of those 4 teams had to announce their option decisions by then. That was the deadline to extend bona fide offers, all the things of that nature. So, you and I have skimmed the free agency list that the Players Association put out about a month ago multiple times. And, we've talked, I know you brought up like a Ilie Sanchez, a Joao Paulo, Albert Rusnak, when we were looking at names that could potentially be a fit, or at least like from our fandom perspective, right? That we would love, that would get us excited.
Yeah.
Right. And we, of course, with our mock off season, we talked about the positional needs that we think that this roster has. So the one thing that stood out to me, I didn't go through all, what was it, 24, 25 other teams that had their releases come out by Wednesday. But the one I wanted to go look at was San Jose, because we knew that Jeremy Ebobisse had that option, and we wanted to see if they were going to decline him. Because, look, if we don't end up getting a DP or a U22 at the striker position, Ebobisse would be a free agent that would make me maybe not overly excited, right? But I think it would be a good addition to the depth chart there with G and with Diego Rubio. And I think Ebobisse probably would profile as your starter then. So Ebobisse was declined, so the dreaded Ebobisse is a possibility in free agency.
Yeah, I mean, I would still be bummed if that was our only 9 that came in here during this offseason. But obviously, that would take at least 2 goals away from us being scored on in our annual matchup with the dreaded Ebobisse there. But yes, man, be able to get him as like a rotational piece and one of your backup 9s, if you have one of these higher profile guys come in, would be really, really nice. And, I know we're going to get into a couple of names here in this free agency, which I'm definitely excited to talk about. I just don't know if there's a lot of like really great fits, and I'm still kind of hoping that there's a larger play in mind here when it comes to filling out this roster.
Yeah, I think there will be, and we can maybe talk about some of those larger plays here in a little bit. Some of the teams that I did make sure to check in on in terms of their option decisions, were our in-state rivals here. So I went north first. I looked at FC Dallas, and there's really no notable declines there, right? Of course, some names that we are very familiar with how many times we have played FC Dallas in our first 4 seasons. But nothing that stood out to me like, oh, they lost X player. Well, that could be good, for us, or they're going to have trouble replacing him. So Houston was a little bit of a different story. You go out there and you check on the Orange team. I don't think we discussed this on the podcast, but I think it was the day after Houston was eliminated by Seattle in the first round of the MLS playoffs, which ended with Hector Herrera being tossed out of that match for spitting at the head official. That I think it was the next day that they announced that he would not be returning. I believe he was just out of contract. So kind of an unceremonious exit there, right? Getting ejected, getting run off the pitch there with the red card, and then in Houston no longer. But with these options, they also declined Latif Blessing, Tate Schmidt. Obviously, both of those guys were kind of rotational pieces for them, but solid MLS rotational pieces. I think I said poor Tate Schmidt just continues to be the one who loses these playoff PK shootouts. He was the one that sent it into the stands at Q2 back in 2022, and he also missed the PK at home that sealed Seattle's victory there in the first round against Houston. But they also declined Daniel Steres, who's a game-in, game-out starter on their back line, and our boy, Steve Clark, no longer a member of the Houston Dynamo. And the one option that they picked up, was Andrew Tarbell. So I did a little bit of digging financially for them. Clark was on $684K this past year. So he was, I think that was a TAM player last year, like minimally, but it was with his guaranteed compensation there. And Tarbell was just on $280,000. So I think also looking at some of the other pieces that they still have under contract, this may just be a financial move that Steve Clark was a cap casualty here for Houston. But look, man, I had nothing against Andrew Tarbell when he was here, and it's going to be a little bit weird if he does remain the starter here coming into next season. It is going to be weird to see him between the sticks as their goalkeeper one.
Absolutely. And I mean, you look at the Ache situation, and from the things that I read, the spitting incident definitely played a bit of a role in his departure there from Houston. And we're chatting beforehand, and obviously we know his game. We respect his game. And I was like, oh man, I'd be excited if we could get him. And then you kind of reminded me, with his tenure there in Houston, with the success that they had, it just never seemed like he was all the way bought in. It never seemed like he was really somebody who was disciplined and like had his head on straight at all times. And when you're a 34, 35-year-old midfielder in this league, like you need leadership out of that type of guy. And like, he just wasn't really providing it on a consistent basis. But man, I will be excited to not have to see him come onto the pitch 2-3 times a year if he's not starting the game, and just watch the entire game change from the gravity that he commands every time he's out there. But he's another rotational guy like Latif there. Like that's an interesting piece for them to be missing. So we're happy to see that. I don't know the entire cap situation. I don't know if you have a better insight into that, but it sounds like they're trying to make some cuts that are a little difficult to make. And like this is part of that business that we've been talking about for so long here.
Yeah, I think that, I guess first for Herrera, right? I don't think either of us would question his buy-in or the success they had in 2023, right?
Mm-hmm.
Open Cup champions, right? Western Conference final run there. But yeah, it just sandwiched by the start, right, where we knew he wasn't fully bought in that first season.
Yeah.
With the videos of him taking shots, like I think while a Houston game was going on, he was out injured. And then, this year struggled with injury right from the start, right? That was part of the reason we were so low on Houston, is because we thought it could be a even longer term injury than it ended up being at the beginning of the year there. But I don't have a great, I guess, going back to what you asked about if I had a clearer picture on their cap situation. I don't. But what I do know, and just because I saw this on their press release, it surprised me that Sebas Ferreira, who is their second DP striker, right, next to Ezequiel Ponce, he's still under contract. He didn't have an option this year. And like the fact that they can't move this guy, like he has been such a dead weight for them.
Yeah.
And I think it makes me encouraged from a fandom rivalry standpoint, right? That they are losing Ache, right? That they didn't, you got the Open Cup title, but what else really came out of it? Now that they've moved past that, Steve Clark out of there. And as much like it's hard to not let the Steve Clark performances and his game log at Q2 Stadium like cloud your judgment. But like he, I think, is a top half keeper in this league. So I think with these decisions coming down in Houston, they're taking a significant hit, and they've still got the Albatross Ferreira contract there, right? Where it's not necessarily killing their salary cap because he's a DP and just hits at the max cap hit, but it's the DP slot that he is taking, and at a position where their other DP resides and is a better player. So it'll just be something to watch, a little bit of Schadenfreude in there, maybe with the Ferreira contract right now, but as the offseason revs up and we move into training camp throughout January is where here in the North End, we do start paying attention to the moves of some of these other teams, and not just our rivals, but it felt like a decent place to start here as the calendar turns to December.
Absolutely. I mean, you're going to anticipate that they're going to be making some moves. I assume they're shopping Sebas and trying to move on from him. I don't see why you would want to have two DP9s and one of them is just absolute dead weight that you're getting nothing out of. If they're going to have any success with that is one thing or another, but we know that these guys can be sold to other leagues or wherever they're going to end up. So I think they'll probably move on from him, but like we like that we have some that they have some hard decisions to make here, and like you're already starting to see some of this fat get cut.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where like I think the continuity up there in Dallas could really benefit them because Jesus was in and out with injury all year. Obviously, Velasco was coming back from the ACL. And now that these guys, they got a couple weeks in at the end of the season together and a full off season, we could see Dallas, kind of revitalized and benefiting from that consistency year over year. So again, this week, we won't have any of these important dates. So we will have another episode of the North End podcast before these hit. But did want to discuss them here, because we are just on the cusp of all the action taking place next Monday, so December 9th, 8 a.m. Central until noon. So they call it the half-day trade window. It's just 4 hours, but you could technically, on Monday the 9th, wake up to an Austin FC intra-league trade here. Again, I think that's very unlikely, but it is a MLS offseason process here that starts on Monday. Then Wednesday the 11th, we have the expansion draft for San Diego FC. The list of eligible players for the expansion draft will be released on Tuesday the 10th, as will the complete list of free agents, also released on Tuesday the 10th, because the day after the expansion draft on the 11th, Thursday the 12th, free agency opens at noon Central. So Friday the 13th is also re-entry stage 1. You know, if you're superstitious, maybe you stay out of the reentry stage 1 on Friday the 13th. You wait for stage 2 on the 19th or 20th. I forget which day it is exactly. And then the 11th through the 14th, so Wednesday through Saturday of week after next, we have the MLS College Showcase, which is for lack of a better term, is the combine, right, for the draft. So still a week that on the schedule is pretty barren here between now and our next episode, but right after that, we're going to hit the ground running.
I mean, it's crazy how quickly it sneaks up on you, and then it's just fast and furious every weekend. Like you just outlined there, you got something going on, and like it just really sneaks up on you. But we're right here, we're right at the end of this line here, about to get into this exciting offseason for this team, and a lot of different teams. Obviously, we got MLS playoffs going on, which unfortunate results, I think, on the Western Conference side. Last night, I was pulling for Seattle just because I really don't like the Galaxy. But that should be a good cup. I'm interested to see that. You were talking about it last night. It should be a pretty frenzied game between Red Bull and the Galaxy there. Two teams that can score and two teams that really like to get out there and play open. So I'm looking forward to it.
I'm going to be really interested to see. I know we shut down our bets for the year, but what's the implied total in this match? I said last night, it just off the top of my head, I see those two teams matching up on paper. I'm like, oh, this is going to be 5-3 or something like that, right?
Yep.
We'll see. Both teams advance to the MLS Cup final behind 1-0 victories, so clearly they can win in multiple ways. But yeah, so and that's another thing, thinking about this calendar, MLS Cup is this week, and then you turn around, the trade window is on Monday. Yeah. So it's if you're the GM of the winning team, you don't even have time to celebrate that night because you got to be up, right? Taking calls. Can you imagine doing the trade window and free agency and all that stuff while you're also trying to plan a championship parade? I think I'd be okay if that happened to us, but
come on now.
It is interesting. Legitimately, no off season for those teams.
A problem we'd like to have.
Yeah, exactly. It's certainly a good problem to have. One that we hope to experience one day. No rumor roundup this week, man. Again, it's all quiet on the green smoke front. But to that end, just wanted to kind of dive into this as we hear, a lot of the other pods in the Austin FC independent media space. Of course, at this point of the year, a lot of us are saying a lot of very similar things on a week-to-week basis. But one thing that popped up, right, is I think most people taking a look at the roster who have at least an idea of how the MLS roster rules and roster construction works knows that we are likely to get at least one U22 signing in this window, if not multiple, with either 3 or 4 of those slots vacant. And one conversation I've seen, not just in the past couple of weeks, but really just since we became fans of this league, is how important are those U22 spots really, right? Because I think there is maybe a consensus among kind of the diehard fans that are locked into this type of stuff that the U22s aren't as important. And so we wanted to dive into some of these numbers, just specifically from this season here in 2024. But how much did each club get out of their U22 spots, if they even had any at all? We did have one team that did not utilize a single U22 initiative position. So for the YouTube viewers here, we'll pull up this little table. I guess we can get maybe 1 or 2 zooms here. There we go. We can close that out. So you can see here on this table, we've just got every team in alphabetical order, how many U22 spots they used on the fall roster construction release that the league put out, total appearances, starts, minutes, goals, assists. We totaled the contributions there. And then we noted their finish in the table. So I guess for me, the thing that I came into this thinking was that the U22s may not, when we gather all this data, that they may not pan out to be something that is super indicative of success in this league. And I don't think we have any sweeping, broad, 100% slam dunk conclusions here.
Yeah.
But we do have some trends to look at. First of all, just from an Austin FC perspective, right? We just had one U22 initiative player this past season. That was Jan Kolmanich. 15 appearances, 6 starts, 536 minutes. We did get 3 assists out of Jan And so 3 total goal contributions for Austin. But the 536 minutes, teams that got less minutes out of their U22 slots, no matter how many they had, the teams that got less minutes than us out of those U22 initiative spots were Dallas, Philadelphia, San Jose, and Toronto. What do all those teams have in common?
They're not very good. And you're looking at the teams that got 0 goals from their U22 spots. You got Austin there, Dallas, Kansas City, Philly, San Jose, like you mentioned, all very bad teams, and we're not trying to make the point here that you gonna nail your U22, it's gonna have a huge impact, but you see the quality of some of these teams that are getting thousands of minutes out of these U22 roster designations and their finishes on the table, and it is a bit telling to see that, and with them with MLS and everything, it's so much different from these other sports that we follow. A majority, I feel like, of the Austin FC fan base follows, where it's you can tank for a draft pick. You can go get a guy who kind of changes the course of your franchise, and you can have him for years and years and years. And these U22 spots are kind of in that same realm for me, in regard to the impact that they can make. And it's been so difficult to actually gauge how successful or how impactful these U22 slots have been, because Austin has just been so devoid of any sort of contributions from that position that it's just hard to look at the rest of the league and be like, well, dang, look at these teams that have all these other guys that are actually making moves. The tables they're moving up the tables. And then you look at it on the other side where it's just you can also get a nice return on investment with some of these guys. If you can have them play well and then move on from them, sell them later on, that's just really something that excites me. And I want to see some younger guys. I'm tired of this team being one of the oldest teams in the league. We got so excited to get Buka in here and everything like that. I want to see some younger guys who we can get out there and they can go run and just infuse the team with a little bit of youth and fire and passion and everything like that. So I really like looking at these numbers. This is fun. You see Miami there. Good Lord.
Yeah, I know. Well, and it's not just the infusing the team with the youth and the excitement and the goal scoring ability or the service, right? That high quality stuff. It's the ability to develop those players while they're here and then sell them on and generate more not just the revenue for the club, but again, you can turn that sales revenue into 3 million and change in terms of GAM now with the new rules. So that's how you also expand your salary cap on a year-to-year basis. And so this is not just for the cap savings you get, right? Because just as a refresher for anybody, right, you can for a lot of these U22s, they're going to be international transfers, right? So you need international slots. You usually have to pay a significant transfer fee for some of the more high-end U22s around MLS, but those transfer fees don't factor into your salary cap puzzle. When they're U22 initiative players, they only count 200K, or I think for a certain, if you sign a U22, but then you're going to be a certain age by the end of it, I think it can go up to 250K. But again, you can pay these players up to the max salary cap hit, so almost 750,000 next year. And so if you say you pay 3 of them the max salary cap hit, but you're only taking 600K off your cap, which we know the full cap picture is around 11 million next year. Again, there's so many benefits of even just utilizing the space. And then if you get that winning production out of the spots, we know that it translates to the table, because if we sort this here, Ian, I guess we can sort it here in a second. Thinking back, you mentioned the teams that didn't have any goals from their U22s here this year, right? There's also Atlanta had just 1, right? Nashville had just 1. Seattle had 1. St. Louis had 1. Vancouver had 1. And so, right, again, is it a hard and fast rule that you cannot be good if you don't hit on your U22s or you don't utilize them? No. Seattle, 7th in the table this past year. They're kind of an exception to that rule or that trend. But Austin, right, we get 3 goal contributions out of Kolmanich this year. Back in the expansion season, right? So we had Rodney Redis. We brought Musa Jite in the middle of the year, and we had Kolmanich from the beginning. 1 goal, 5 assists. So 6. And you can see this is just the 2024 data, but every team on average got 9.9 goal contributions out of their U22 spots this year. And so essentially you can just round that up and say 10, right? And that's with not all these teams using all 3 U22 spots, or all 4 if they went 2-4 GAM, right? Some of these teams have 1, some of them have 2, some of them have 3 where only 1 or 2 of them contributed.
Mm-hmm.
So the average for a team being 10 goal contributions from the U22 Initiative spots this season, we had 6 in 2021, we had 8 in 2022, and we had 2, both from Rodney Redis, in 2023. So we have not really ever come close to the average, at least that there was this year. We didn't go back and do this for all of those seasons. So there could certainly be a situation where you go back and you do this for the 2022 season, and our 8 contributions could be more at the league average level. But again, this just kind of confirms we have not been anywhere close over the 4 years of this club to meeting even the average production out of this U22 initiative program that the league has. And so, again, we only used 1 spot, so we're not using the roster mechanisms for cap savings. We haven't developed any of our U22s and been able to sell them on for a transfer fee coming back. So we haven't been able to grow our salary cap in that respect. And then again, you see just the counting stats there in the goal contributions. It just hasn't been good enough in really any aspect of our U22 slots over these first 4 years.
I mean, that's putting it nicely. It's been an abject failure in regard to us getting any sort of production out of these guys. And like, that's kind of why I was so interested and intrigued by us potentially running that 2-4 route next year. Because if you can get 4 guys who you can bring in and like get quality minutes out of for only an $800K cap hit for 4 players, like that just seems like there's a lot of opportunity to fill that roster out with some more veteran guys who are also more established and potentially, already better players than these U22 initiative guys coming in. But like that route interests me quite a bit. And I don't know if that's because I've just fallen in love with the prospect of getting a stud U22, multiple fantastic players in that position, but it has not gone as planned at all for Austin in regard to hitting on these slots thus far. And I think that, we can't correlate and tie all of this back to us being really pitiful, one of the worst teams at finding U22 production. But I do think it's played a role in the otherwise tepid success of Austin in its short tenure here.
Yeah, no, I agree. And again, you mentioned some of those teams that just get tons and tons of goals and assists, right? Portland leads the way with 34, right? And so like they've spent money on Moreno coming in and Anthony coming in, right? 34 contributions. They got 5,800 minutes, 68 starts out of their 3 U22s this year. And again, that's a team that was in the wild card, right? Salt Lake, I think, 6th in the Supporter Shield standings. They got 32 goal contributions. They did utilize the 2-4 GAM method, so they had all 4. So maybe a little bit cheap there since they had 4, but all of those guys played for RSL, right? 95 appearances, 6,100 minutes. Then of course you look at the teams that are really able to splash the cash for some of these guys, like the Galaxy, but they only had 2, right? It was Aude and it's Joveljic, but that's 24 goal contributions and 44 starts. LAFC, they have 3, right? They got 16 goal contributions in about 3,800 minutes. So that's looking at the top. But let's look at the bottom now, because I think this is somewhat similar to, right, in general in the global soccer landscape, right? The total roster spend usually, again, correlates to position in the table, right? Or your overall finish in a season. That's not a hard and fast rule, and that, of course, applies to MLS too. Austin is a shining example. We have been top 5 or 6 since that Driussi extension kicked in for $6 million a year in terms of total roster spend, and of course, we have been nowhere near 6th in the Supporter Shield table since then. Toronto is another team that stands out where the roster spend is off the charts for MLS, but the results are not there. So I think similarly with U22s, again, just because you're not getting production or not using those U22 spots like some of these teams are, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be a good team. I mentioned Seattle earlier. They're one of the teams here. So that I wanted to discuss, right? 9 teams from each conference make some sort of postseason soccer, right? So 18 of the 29 teams, meaning that 11 teams don't make or don't play any sort of postseason soccer. So of the bottom 11 teams in U22 goal contributions, and you can see we've sorted them on the screen here, 8 of the bottom 11 did not make the playoffs or the wild card game. The exceptions here were Atlanta, who was, of course, the 9 seed and made their Cinderella run there in the Eastern Conference, upsetting Inter Miami. But they were 20th in the table. They only got 22 appearances and 5 starts, just 614 minutes from their 3 U22s, 3 total goal contributions. Vancouver was also an exception. They made the Western Conference wildcard game, although, again, you see the difference between the West and the East. Vancouver in the wildcard game in the West, 14th in the Supporters' Shield standings, but they only got 4 goal contributions in 2,300 minutes from their 3 U22s. And then Seattle, the true outlier here, 2 U22s. I believe really Leo Chu, and then I think Atencio was there. They only got 4 goal contributions. Leo Chu, I think, spent a good part of the season injured, but of course they just bowed out on Saturday. Western Conference Finals exit and 7th in the Supporters' Shield table. But these other 8 teams, right? Mm-hmm. And Austin, of course, is included there. Philly, San Jose, Toronto, Sporting KC, Austin, St. Louis, and Nashville, right? Those teams did not make the playoffs and find themselves in the bottom 11 here.
I mean, it wasn't even close for a lot of those teams. Some of the worst teams in the league. I mean, San Jose was one of the worst teams of all time, and like you see, they don't even have a single spot used up there.
Yeah, and I left Dallas out there, had to scroll up because I was counting there. I was like, that's only 7. There's Dallas as well. Didn't get any goal contributions from their 2 U22s and no appearances, right? So Dallas, Philly, and San Jose, who didn't use one. And so, there's a lot of things wrong with the San Jose Earthquakes, but there's a big glaring one to me that they have what was very close to a historically bad season there. And they're not utilizing this program at all.
I just don't get it. You know what I don't know. I don't know what it is. I don't know if you need better scouts elsewhere. You know what I mean? Like, we have to take that component into mind here when it's like we're trying to find guys. Like, do you need better scouts all over the place trying to find these dudes, trying to get them in here because they make such an impact. You look at some of those, like, not even looking at the teams that did not succeed with their U22 spots. You look at some of the best teams in the league and you look at how much minutes they got out of these guys. It's a grueling season. We do have these long breaks that come into play where there's nothing going on, but like when you're in the heart of it and when you're in the thick of it, it is a rigorous schedule for a lot of these guys. You look at Miami, over 4,400 minutes for them. Like Minnesota finished 10th, 4,100 minutes for them. 3,700 for LAFC. Like, there's just so much potential in these spots, and that's why I really, really hope that we're able to get guys in here who we can actually utilize and play. And like, because we've seen such poor performances from so many guys in these U22 slots. And like, Komenich had a rough season this year. I was surprised to see the 3 assists actually in only 15 appearances. Obviously, he came on late with some nice ones,
he got 2 in the last 5 minutes of the season. So it was almost 1 goal contribution.
That's right. It should be. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, he got those last 2 there. Man, I don't know. What's Miami's got multiple guys under U22. They're not on U22s, but they're under. Oh no, that's the 25 list.
Yeah. Underrated. Well, and so they also have technically 5 U22s on their roster because I believe 2 of them were injury replaced. So they did get the roster and cap relief for those injuries. But you see the 3 outliers in terms of the 11 teams that missed the playoffs. Those 3 teams that made it out of the bottom 11 in goal contributions from U22s were New England. They got 9 goal contributions in just 1,653 minutes from their 2 U22s. Chicago got 13 goal contributions. They had almost 3,900 minutes. Brian Gutierrez, I think, was 2nd in minutes and goals for them, right? So he's a key piece of what they do there. So that can juice the numbers. But again, if you have that one player who's so integral to what you're doing, like, that can make your entire U22 process look like a success, even though a team like Chicago finishes 28. It certainly wasn't because they were lacking in the U22 production area. And you see DC as well, kind of similarly with Cudi Pietro and Priani there, 14 goal contributions in 3,200 minutes. So again, just saying all of this and trying to highlight like why we have been harping so much over the last month plus on we need to spend on these U22 guys, because it's not just for the roster, the salary cap relief. It's not just for the salary cap growth that you can experience from selling these guys, but the production, and not just the counting stats, the minutes that these young guys can eat up as well, are just very important to the successful teams. And again, it's not a one-to-one. It doesn't mean that if we get 4,000 minutes out of the U22s next year, it doesn't mean we're going to be a good team. But you see that the good teams lean towards numbers like that.
I would like to be in that position for sure.
Anything else for you here on our U22 breakdown?
No, this is great propaganda.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of propaganda, let's move on to the 2024 Austin FC Goal of the Year bracket update here. We are into the final round. And I think, as we both predicted, Sebastian Driussi's game winner against San Jose at home takes down Hader Obrion's 19th minute goal at home against the Galaxy. And the goal that you put in the call for at the beginning of this exercise, Guilherme Biru's 67-minute goal against San Jose Earthquakes, takes down Owen Wolf's 75th minute goal on the road at Toronto. So a couple things that I found interesting about this, number one, I did on Thanksgiving morning wake up and I took a peek at the results at that time. Mm-hmm. Both of these goals were losing.
That blows my mind.
Yes. Driussi ended up with 58.3% of the vote in his matchup, and Biru ended up with 55.6%. So it may have been like, while we've been doing this voting, I'll put out kind of a one day, like you got 24 hours left to vote, right? And we post that on our socials. That may have been what pushed these over the top, because we could have had almost like, the MLS almost had Red Bull versus, Minnesota or whatever. Like we almost had Owen Wolf versus Hader Obrion. Like one of the goals in a loss, the other one wasn't a game winner or anything. So it seems like, certainly the favorite with the Driussi goal advanced here. And then Biru, which seems to be a fan favorite here. So I'm interested to see which one of these comes out on top, because I think this is maybe the toughest decision we've had yet, outside of like maybe this tops the Biru versus the Danny goal, which we saw in the quarterfinals there in the Vibes region. The other thing I find very interesting is that these two goals came back to back in the same game. And so I think it highlights how special that game was for Austin fans because of, we know about the game script and how it played out.
I mean, that was one of the most incredible electric atmospheres we've ever had at the Q, watching that comeback take place there. And I mean, these are the two goals that I thought should be in the finals, matching up with one another. And now I have a hard choice here. Obviously I touted this Biru one, but this Seba goal is one of the greatest goals of club history, of all time. Yeah, but how about of all time? And so I don't know where I'm going to vote. I touted this Biru. I obviously have an affinity for him, and the way that he plays, and that strike that he made was absolutely fantastic. And I think if he was matched up with any other goal in this type of situation, he would win. But you're getting a game winner in the 111th minute of stoppage time. So
101st minute total.
Oh, sorry, 101st. Yes. Sorry about that. So I just don't know if it's going to be tough. I'm excited to see what happens here with the one and only goal of the year bracket.
Yeah, I was also thinking back to because in 2023, right, the winner was Driussi's chip over Roman Berkey on opening night, right? And this game too was also so early in the year. I want to say it was in April.
That's right.
So it's obviously we knew that game and these moments in particular were very special last year, but at the time, if you would have told me this is the high point this is basically the high point of the season, I would have been a little bit disappointed. And same with 2023. So I'm going to be looking out early next season for any sort of special goals and making a mental note and being please don't let this be it. Give me a goal of the year in November, right?
Yeah.
It means we're playing in the playoffs.
Absolutely. A game winner in September, so we can actually sneak into the playoffs.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know what I'm going to vote. Who are you voting for here?
I'm not giving that up. That's not something I talk about publicly. You know, I keep my goal politics out of conversation. I don't talk about my goal politics at the dinner table.
Oh, okay. Okay. Shit.
Who are you voting for?
I don't talk about that kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, if you are listening to this, voting is open now. You can go to thenorthendpodcast.com to see the bracket, to submit your votes here in the final round. It has arrived. We will crown the 2024 Austin FC Goal of the Year on next week's episode. And let's close out episode 189 with a big Academy update here. We have the Copa Rayados going on this past week and weekend. This was over the Thanksgiving holiday, so I'm getting these updates and just kind of aghast at how the young guys are out there. You know, we're foregoing mom's turkey and all the sides and desserts. We're going out here. We're hungry for dubs. So, of course, there was a group stage here, and this was the U13s, 14s, and 15s participating in the Copa Rayados. So on day one of, I guess we call it the group stage here, right? U15s, 1-1 draw against Tijuana, and then a 1-1 against Fenómenos RGV. And we got our goal. That was an own goal that RGV gave us there. U14s on day one drew 1-1 against Rayados. Toby scored that lone goal. And then a 2-0 victory against Tijuana. And Toby gets a brace. And that is a theme here for the U14s. U13s on day one. 2-1 loss against Cruz Azul. And then 2-0 loss against the hosts, Rayados. So day two of the group stage E. This was on Thanksgiving. Just one game apiece for the boys, but U15s 3-0 against HTX. Luke and Roberto scored. And then apparently we have a new player who's on trial. I believe his name is Lucas. So he made an impact in this game, scoring a goal. 3-0 victory over HTX. U14s 2-0 over GFI. Carlos and Bruce scored the 2 goals there. And then U13s follow suit. 2-0 over HTX. Asante and Raymond scored the 2 goals for the good guys there. Then the final day of the group stage, day 3, U15s 0-0 draw against Global Sporting Club. U14s 2-0 over Tijuana. Bryce scored, and that was on an assist by Juan. And Toby drew and scored a PK. So Toby continues his dominance there in the Copa Rayados. U13s 1-1 draw against Lake Travis Elite. All 3 teams made it through to the knockout round. So those semifinal rounds, U13s drop it 2-1 against Cruz Azul, but a run to the knockouts. So I think a successful tournament for the 13s. U14s, identical scoreline, 2-1 loss. This one hurt against Houston Dynamos, U14s. But look, we see those guys multiple times a year. At some point, they had to get one, so that's all right. Max had the goal, but this maybe contributed to the loss here. I know we were already down, but 3 red cards, in the final 15 minutes for Austin's U14. So we'll pick the pieces back up, boys. Yeah, that one got a little heated there. So we'll pick the pieces back up. And look, we got to check the schedule. When do the U14s play the Dynamo again? Because this rivalry permeates every level. Every level.
We need our fix, brother. We need our fix.
So U15. Go ahead.
No, I was going to make a bad joke. Go ahead.
Okay, well, that's what you get here, right?
I'll save it. I'll save it.
U15s in the semis, though. 5-0 victory against SGA. Goals from Zayden, Roberto, Xavier, Zeke, and Elijah. So they advance to the final today on Sunday against Tijuana, and they get the 2-1 victory. U15s champions of the Copa Rayados. Goals today by Luke and Lucas, the trialist. So Lucas making an impact here with the U15s, bringing home the hardware. We love to see it. Congrats to the boys on a good week, good tournament. And then next weekend, we've got the 16s and the 18s out there in Cali for the MLS Next Fest. So we'll have another lengthy Academy update on next week's episode.
Very good. Good stuff. Congrats to the boys there. That's awesome.
Yeah, great way to wrap up episode 189 here. Anything else for you before we shut it down?
No, sir. All set.
All right, everybody. We appreciate you tuning in, sticking with us here on episode 189 of the North End Podcast. We're back next Sunday, recapping everything that happens in the Austin FC universe between now and then. Enjoy your week, everybody. We'll do the same. It's the calm before the storm. We'll see you back here next Sunday. Until then, he's E, and I'm Zach. Vamos Austin FC, everybody. Goodbye.